This presentation outline and the presentation itself are for general educational purposes only, and they're not intended to provide specific guidance or legal advice. You should not rely on this general information to make decisions about specific immigration matters, nor EB-5 investment decisions. You should seek the assistance of a lawyer to help you resolve these issues. Hello to all of our attendees. I am Andrew Radosevich, Global Market Specialist for CMB Regional Centers. I will be your host for today's event. On behalf of CMB Regional Centers, a very warm welcome to all of you that were able to join us today. It's truly our pleasure to have you here. Today, we're delighted to present to you Financial Planning in America, What Immigrants Should Know. We hope you find it a tremendous value discussing the topics we'll be covering today. CMB is thrilled to add today's event to our library of topics in our Coming to America series. We have some distinguished guests to lead our conversations today. First, our very special guest, Miss Dianne Stewart, President of Pathway USA. Dianne is an expert in international relocation, and it's the focus of Pathway USA as well. She has been able to assist over 1,500 families to successfully transition their lives to another country and has been doing so since 2006. Next, Mr. Todd Curry, Wealth Manager at Second Half Strategies. Todd is an experienced wealth advisor who takes a personal and proactive approach with his clients. He is motivated by genuine concern for their families and their financial well-being and helps them achieve financial success by removing barriers. And finally, Mr. Ky Boyle, Vice President of CMB Regional Centers. Ky has more than 25 years of economic development experience. Ky will hit a milestone this October of 10 years at CMB, and it's safe to say that he's one of the most traveled and valued members in our organization. Thank you for all you do for our company. So today, we will start out with Ky very briefly touching on the basics of EB-5. Dianne will then present on how she and her company provide their expertise assisting clients in relocation. Following Dianne's presentation, Todd will present and cover financial planning information basics in a very high overview. Following Mr. Curry's presentation, Ky will then cover our current project, Group 78, Hillwood, California Build-A-Suit. Then we will look forward to an interactive Q&A following those presentations. Some of you have already sent in questions ahead of our event today, and thank you for those. If those questions apply to our topics today, we will start with those questions first, but we certainly encourage you to please ask questions in the Q&A button located in the controls for today's webinar down towards the bottom. As we're doing our best to provide knowledge on financial planning, please understand individually specific questions sometimes may be requesting financial advice, and we may not be able to address them in our webinar today. However, we would request that you please reach out to Todd via the contact information provided today, or to your accountant or your other advisors. And one last reminder, we will be leaving your audio muted for the entirety of today's event. Without further ado, Mr. Ky Boyle.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for joining us here virtually. It's not the best situation. We'd certainly love to be with you all together in one room, but that's just not possible in this COVID-19 environment that we find ourselves here globally. But it is important that we take the opportunity to share some information, some important information, and that information that you can use or anywhere. And when you are coming to the United States, some things to think about. When you come to America, there's a whole host of things that you might consider or you might overlook, and we're trying to bring that information to you to maybe spark some interest or some further investigation, if you will, into those topics. And again, like Andrew had mentioned, this is a series. We're building a library of different topics for those who are coming to the United States, coming to America, to think about, and so that library is available to pull the reference off the shelf and to apply it as needed. So as we get into today, and Andrew touched on these agenda points earlier, and he touched on them briefly, but let me drill down a little bit further into today's agenda, and then we'll move through the process of sharing with you this incredible information that Todd and Dianne have, and then importantly, we'll have a Q&A. We'll have that interactive Q&A where you can ask your questions of our panelists and get some answers. and find out how to contact them for some more in-depth information should you need to. And Dianne has this wealth and this vast knowledge. She herself is never going to, I'm not going to take her story, but she has thought about and encountered some of the things that others need to think about or to want to prepare for their new life in America. What happens when you arrive to the United States, and how about living in the United States, settling here? What about real estate and those types of things? And then importantly, she's going to talk about how to be happy in your new chosen home here in America. Mr. Todd Curry has been gracious enough to share his time with all of us here today, and he's going to talk about choosing a financial team. Very important when you're here in America to plan and to strategize for your future financial foundation or those of your children. Talking about investments and insurance, and if you're an employer or you work for an employer, what are those benefits and what are some of those things and how do those come into play here in America? What about retirement? Perhaps you're thinking about retiring, perhaps you're already retired. Well, what about those considerations? And then the next step is passing that estate or generational planning. How do I meet my obligations as someone that has an obligation back in the home country to the family, or I would like to pass some of those values and some of that wealth on to my children who are here with me in the United States. And then today I'm going to talk about the EB-5 investment program. I'm going to touch upon that a little bit. We're going to introduce the CMB team and why we are here and what we do and why we do that. Also, there's been some changes in the EB-5 timeline. I'm going to touch on that. I think those are some important things. Talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the impact COVID-19 has on some various projects and why that matters to an EB-5 investor. And then we'll touch upon our current EB-5 project. And then probably the most important is that interactive question and answer. And that will be that point where you, as our guests and those who have already sent us those questions, you'll be able to participate. And again, we encourage that. Make sure that you drop us a question. You can do that throughout, and Andrew will be gathering those questions up so that we can get them answered at the end of our event. Transitioning into the basics of the EB-5 program, it's important to note that at the simplest heart of EB-5, it's a jobs creation program with an immigration benefit. When Congress devised or authored the EB-5 legislation, the purpose was to create jobs for American workers. And those participants, if they do create jobs for American workers, then the benefit for them is a pathway to come to the United States. It is known as EB-5 because it's employment-based EB, and fifth preference is the 5 portion of that. It's administered by the USCIS. There are 10,000 visas available each year to qualified foreign nationals. That means not 10,000 applications, but 10,000 individual visas. And so for example, in a family of 4, there would be mama has a visa and papa gets a visa, and then each child would that qualify who are under the age of 21 and not married, they would also take their own visa. So in that example where the family of 4, it would allow for 2,500 applications each year to fulfill or to absorb all of the visas in the category. The requirements include an investment in a new commercial enterprise, a new business, and the requirement also to create at least 10 jobs. There's that job portion we were talking about. They create at least 10 qualifying jobs to obtain the goal or the green card for the family and the individual participant. The present investment amount is $1.8 million, with the exception that if the investment takes place in what's known as a targeted employment area, TEA, then it reduces the investment amount presently to $900,000. It also requires the filing of 2 petitions. The first qualifying petition is known as the I-526 or the I-526, and that's the initial qualifier. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, the USCIS, evaluates that petition, and if that petition is approved, then it allows for the participants to move forward through the rest of the program. After a period of conditional residency, and we'll talk about that on the next slide, then the second petition is filed 90 days before the conclusion of that conditional residency period. And that is known as the I-829 or I-H29 petition. And basically that proves to the USCIS that at least 10 jobs have been created as a result of the investment, that the investor has sustained their investment throughout their conditional residency period. That means the money is still in the investment, and that the investor has entered the United States and maintained and become a good citizen here of the US. Now the EB-5 timeline has changed a little bit, but it still follows the natural flow of things. It requires the investment, it requires the filing of an I-526 petition, and that I-526 petition on this particular timeline begins the line. After the I-526 petition has been filed, then the USCIS adjudicates the petition, and it takes a period of time, and you'll find online what that length of time is. It varies in length from quarter to quarter or month to month when they post those. But what's happened recently and why the timeline has changed is March 31st of this year, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, the USCIS, moved to a visa availability approach in the processing of the I-526 petitions that are being filed. What that means is if there's a visa available for that particular applicant to be assigned for that country of origin, then they will allow for that visa to be processed first. If the queue is longer for a country that has maxed out their number of visas, there's a visa allocation designated to every country each year of no more than 700, then the queue builds up. So what they're doing now is rather than a first in, first out approach, they're taking the approach that if you've got a visa that's available to you, they will process your I-526 petition first. So that could shorten the processing time for many investors, and it may lengthen the time of the queue or allow for a queuing to continue to build for countries that do have visa caps or have met their visa allocation requirement. And those include China and Vietnam and maybe India and Korea and Brazil in the future. Some other countries may hit that at some point in the future. Now, the point at which you enter the United States varies, but that's after the consulate interview. And once you enter the United States, it begins your 2 years of conditional residency. So that's the timeline, and that's the important change for the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. They are processing the I-526 petitions based upon the available visa, and so they're prioritizing in that way. Okay, that's the basics of the EB-5 program. It certainly can go a lot more in depth than that, and it can be more complex than that. If you'd like more information on that, you'll find some contact information for CMB and for me personally, if you'd like, at the end of our presentation. But I'd like to transition into our guests, and certainly they're the reason that we're here, and that's to talk to you about things to think about before you come to the United States and how to live in America. So our panelist, Dianne, is one of those experts that we're just delighted to have. She's very, very gracious. She gives of her time freely. She's very conscientious. Her clients absolutely adore her, and I can see why, and I think you'll find that too. Dianne, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Ky. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be working with CMB in this very important work. It brings great joy to me to relocate families successfully to the United States. I arrived here 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago now, with a family of 2 small children and my husband, and started the journey to pursue our American dream. And it has turned out everything that it said it would, and I'm delighted to be here. And today, I'm going to divide my presentation into 3 separate pieces. The first is, what can you do while you wait in your country? How can you prepare for your new life in the United States? And what tips can we give you today that you can use that will make your life so much easier and make quite a difficult move, probably the most difficult move you'll make in your life for you and your family, much, much easier and much, much more pleasurable. And And then I'm going to talk about what to do when you get to the United States. What things can you do to make your life pleasurable, easier, and make you successful? And then the last thing is I'm going to talk about actually living in the United States and how you can integrate with your community and how you can really become what we believe is the ultimate goal, is to feel like an American and really embrace your new country of your home. So I'm going to speak about these various things. And so let's start with, what can you do before you get here? There are a couple of really important things that I encourage my clients to do. And I have only listed 3 of them, and there are many more of this, many more of these things that you can do before. For example, deciding on where you're going to live is extremely important. Once you've decided on where to live and you've actually selected a state that suits you, there are many different criteria that I take my clients through when they're deciding on where to live. What kind of climate do they like? What kind of business are they involved in? Which is the best state for taxes if they have tax issues that they want to address? So there are a lot of issues as to deciding where to live. And we help you with that. We help you with making the right decision, because oftentimes I see that people come to the United States and they settle in a place which they really don't enjoy. It doesn't suit their lifestyle. Their children don't really enjoy it. And there are so many options in the United States. We have 50 different states, and each one has its own culture, has its own flavor, its own climate. And so very important that you live in a place that you love. So we take you through a process of how to decide where to live. The next most important thing I'm going to focus on is opening a bank account. Opening a United States bank account has been problematic for clients in the past because you actually have to be present in the United States in order to open a bank account. And I'm very pleased to announce today that we are now in a position to open a bank account for our clients who are not in the country. This has taken a lot of hard work and a lot of investigation and research, and we can in fact now offer our clients the opportunity of opening up a bank account. And the reason for that is, once you have a bank account in the United States, you have the facility in order to do things that you really want to do. For example, purchase a property where your family will live when you get here. Establishing a credit score, which is very important. The other thing is that it can get you, you'll have a place to live when you get here. You'll have a place to put your head. You won't be rushing around the city trying to find a place to live. And that can be problematic. And it doesn't really matter how much money you have in the bank. It's whether somebody is prepared to rent you a property because they don't know how you pay your bills. And that's where the very important credit score comes in. And so we help you with that. And we also prepare you before you get here to purchase that property. I've even had clients who have bought property online. They have trusted us and they've trusted their real estate person, and we have bought very successfully properties for people that then move into their house when they get here. And it just takes away all that stress and drama of trying to find a place to live when you land here. So moving on to arriving in the United States. There are many things that you're going to have to do when you get here, but one of the most important things is getting a driver's license. A driver's license in the United States is your identification. That and your social security number are the 2 things that manage you and that prove to people who you are. So if you want to take a regional or a domestic flight from one city to the next, you're going to have a driver's license or a passport. If you want to purchase a vehicle at a dealership, you're going to have a driver's license. If you want to get car insurance so that you can drive that new car out of the dealership, you're going to have a driver's license. So you can see how very important that driver's license is. And I encourage my clients to prepare before they get here. We send them all the details of the DMV in the state that they're going to be living in. And we get them to study for that driver's license, for the test. You have to do a test, I'm afraid, even though you might have not done one for 10 to 15 years since you were 18 or 21, whatever the laws are in your home country. And you have to do an actual driving test. You have to do an online test at the DMV. It's a multiple choice Most of the time, it's a multiple choice exam. It's a short exam, but you need to prepare for that and you need to study, because there are many words that we use here in the United States that you probably don't use in your country. We have different names for different things. So even if you can speak English, you still have to learn these different names. And I had to learn all those different names of various parts of the road and various road signs when I got here. So we can prepare you to do that, and it's really not stressful at all. The driving test is very easy, and so as long as you're a careful driver, you should have no problem. The next most important thing is to get your social security number. Now, sometimes this is included when you apply for your green card. I like to send my clients directly to the Social Security office in the city of your residence and go in there and say, "Hi, I am so-and-so, I'm here, I'm a new resident of the United States. Please tell me that my Social Security number is in process," because that can take a couple of weeks. And without a Social Security number, there are many things that you can't accomplish. For example, the credit score that we've been building for you with your bank account over the years of you waiting to come to the United States needs to have a Social Security number in order to plug in to the financial activities that you've already been planning with us. So very important that you get your Social Security number, because immediately you have that, you give that to the bank, and by magic, you now have a credit score, because now they've connected who you are with your social number and all your financial activities. So if you had been a good student of mine and you had got yourself a mortgage, a foreign national mortgage, which we are able to acquire for you, then suddenly you will have this magical credit score, which many, even Americans, have difficulty establishing a good credit score, and they need coaching and they need help in order to do that, especially younger Americans. So you are then ahead of the game, and you can then walk into a place to purchase a vehicle. You can walk into a cell phone company and you can get yourself a cell phone, and you're not going to have to pay a premium on all those things because you don't have a Social Security number. Employers are even checking your credit score before they offer you a position today. So as you can see, incredibly important to have a good credit score. And without a Social Security number and a driver's license, that's very difficult to get. And then very importantly, that when you get here, you start immediately to develop your personal and professional network. And I'm hoping that this wonderful series that CMB have put together called Coming to America is introducing you to really top professionals where you can access them, you can contact them, and you can plug into their expertise and help you through every step of the way. So as you know, today we have Todd Curry of Second Half Strategies, who is a wonderful financial advisor and wealth manager, and he'll tell you about everything that he does shortly. But very important that you start developing that professional network, people that you can reach out to, that you can ask for help, that you can get guidance from. Incredibly important. So moving on to how to assimilate when you are here, establishing an income, buying a new business. Buying a new business, we can sometimes start before you get here. But I'm finding more and more that my clients who want to invest in a new business when they get here need to come here and live here for a couple of months and get a feel for what they see and what they experience when they get here. So I don't advise particularly that clients buy a business from afar, unless they have a very good relationship with a company here in the United States, they have a plan of what they're going to do, and they've done their due diligence. It's very important for newcomers to check out the landscape, see how things are done here, see how Americans behave, what industries do well, what people need. Very important when making a decision to purchase a new business. And then, of course, the all-important credit score that you can then start actively managing and building. And a good credit score is anything from 780 and above, or 740 and above rather. 850 is like the max. But most times when my clients come here, and they've listened to the rules and they've played the game as I teach it to them, they have generally a credit score in the early 700s, which is really excellent. And many of them have gone on to buy businesses, to get mortgages with that particular credit score. The the next thing that I want to focus on is building your personal relationships with Americans. There are plenty of organizations here for every person that you can imagine, every interest, every sport. There's a group for every single individual. And I encourage you to volunteer at your children's school, to join Rotary if you're not already a member, to interact with the local Chamber of Commerce, to actively pursue relationships that can help you with your business and your family life. So I hope that that has given you a fairly broad overview of what Pathway USA does. We are really your handheld concierge service that can enable you to really make a successful life here. And I wish that I had had somebody like me when I arrived here all those years ago, because I made many mistakes and I bounced from one bad decision to the next until I learned what my mistakes were. So to be happy in your new life in America, you need to establish a circle of American friends. Americans are some of the friendliest and most generous people on the planet. They are always there to help, and I encourage you to always ask for help. When we moved into our new house after 2 years of living in an apartment, which was a mistake because I felt so much more at home when I was in my own home and I had my own furniture and my own things around me, was that my neighbors brought around an apple pie, and there couldn't have been anything more American than a neighbor bringing us a welcome apple pie. And it was just a wonderful gesture, and I have continued that. We've just got some new neighbors move in a couple of days ago, and I have been meaning to go and get the apple pie because I'm too busy to make one myself, which I should, but I'm going to be taking them an apple pie in the next couple of days. So very important that you get to know your neighbors, that you reach out for help, volunteer and attend social engagement opportunities. Go to the parades that your city has. We have wonderful parades. We have a St. Patrick's Day parade. We have a Labor Day parade. We have a Thanksgiving parade. And I encourage you to embrace these holidays. Thanksgiving is unique in the world. I know that Canada has a Thanksgiving as well, but the American Thanksgiving is just really special to me. It's a time to be thankful for everything that we have. It's a time for family to get together. So I really encourage you to embrace these holidays. The 4th of July is an incredible experience. If you've never been to a big 4th of July ceremony, it's just fabulous. It's a celebration of what we all hold dear here. So I encourage you to really reach out to your fellow Americans when you get here. Don't hide away. Immigrants are generally, they generally tend to want to stick with their own. And yes, as a South African, I also hang out with some of my South African friends, and we get together for a barbecue, what we call a braai, and enjoy your jokes together and have fellowship. But I encourage you to reach out to your American neighbors as well. So with that, please feel free to reach out to me, to email me. My email address is on the screen and will be on the screen again. You can go to my website, and we have lots of information on there as well. We have a questionnaire of things that you might need, but we would be delighted to answer your questions and to interact with you and to help you make your successful transition to the United States that much more enjoyable. So thank you so much, Ky. Back to you.
Thank you as well, Dianne. And you can tell you know exactly what you're talking about, having lived through it and experienced it, and things to think about before you get here so you don't have to think about them after you arrive. That's really terrific advice. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Now our next panel expert is Mr. Todd Curry. And he's the founder and wealth manager of Second Half Strategies. And we're really delighted to have Todd share his expertise today and to provide some insight into financial planning here in America and the reason that that's important. And Todd also has a story to tell, but in learning about Todd, he may not talk about the fact that he's a mountain climber, but he is. And so he knows some obstacles. He knows how to overcome those obstacles, and he likes to reduce any obstacles that his clients may have in achieving financial success. Todd, please share with us.
Well, thank you,
for
Ky.
coming, and glad to have you here.
My pleasure, and thank you for that kind introduction. I'm so happy to be here with everybody today talking about financial planning in America. I know that this is a very important topic for you. Getting your finances to work for you as soon as you can is going to be one of those first steps that you're going to want to take. My name is Todd Curry, as Ky mentioned. I started Second Half Strategies 11 years ago, and I started it with one purpose in mind, and that is to help my clients make more informed and then better decisions because of that. And that's my goal today with you. My goal today is to share some information with you, things that you can start thinking about so that you make more informed decisions and better decisions about your finances when you come to America. I'm particularly excited to talk with you today because my wife immigrated to America many years ago. And when she became a citizen, her parents and her extended family immigrated to America as well. They all live within a few hours of us, and they love being here. And I can tell you that being married to my wife and getting to know her family helps me really understand the different things that you're thinking about, the things that you're considering, the challenges you think you may be facing. And I think that the team here and we can help you with those. Things that I want to talk about today are really the key components of planning. Planning seems complex. We like to make it complex. It's really not. Let's try to make it simple today. Things I want to share with you are your advisor team, your financial team. I want to talk about the type of people you might be working with and why. I want to teach you a little bit about investments and insurance. And then I want to introduce the concept of employee benefits for you, whether you're working for a company or whether you actually own a company and have employees. And then I want to spend a little bit of time talking about those big goals that most of you have, and that many of my clients have. Funding college and graduate school for your children and maybe your grandchildren. Funding that retirement dream that we all love to talk about in America. And then planning for your loved ones, the loved ones in your home country, loved ones that are older than you, loved ones who are younger than you. Planning for loved ones is something that we like to do. So I'll spend a little bit of time talking with each one of those. Let's start by talking about your financial team. So in America, you will find that advisors are very specialized. You'll find that it's difficult sometimes to find somebody who does everything for you. So you're going to want to know what advisors do so that you can think about when to hire them. So let's start with, of the 6 advisor types, let's start with a wealth manager. That's what we do at Second Half Strategies. Let me tell you a little bit about what a wealth manager can do for you. A wealth manager's job is to understand your entire financial picture. Your taxes, if you're a business owner, your business, the goals you want to accomplish, what you own and what you owe. And what you want them to do is help you figure out how to put all that together to get to those goals that are important to your family. You want that wealth manager to try to look out for risks along the way so they can communicate them to you so you can think about how to address them. And you want that wealth manager to be there to guide you and advise you when you're trying to make decisions that are important to your family. A good wealth manager will also help you identify the other members of your team. Who do you need to hire? How do you hire them and when? And then they'll coordinate the work for that team. That's what we do at Second Half Strategies. Now, the second type of advisor that you may work with is an investment advisor. An investment advisor's job is fairly straightforward. They're to package different types of investments on your behalf that are appropriate for your goals, and then to monitor them and let you know when you need to make changes. The third type of advisor you may hire is an accountant. And an accountant has 2 main functions. The first is to help to make sure that you pay the appropriate amount of tax to the different revenue authorities, that you file the appropriate paperwork, and you keep good records. The second very important job of an accountant is to help you understand things that you might be able to do to reduce your taxes. The fourth advisor you may work with is an attorney. Now in the US, attorneys really specialize. So if you're buying a house, for example, you may work with a real estate attorney. If you own a business, you may have an attorney that knows the ins and outs of your business and can help you with decisions about that. If you're doing intergenerational planning, you may work with an estate attorney. I've just talked about 3 different types of attorneys, but we could have a whole course on that. So understanding what attorneys to work with and when is going to be important for you. And finally, you are likely going to have some insurance as part of your financial plan. And different insurance professionals offer different types of insurance, and I'll talk about them in the next slide. So let's spend a couple of minutes talking about investments and insurance. And I want to try to keep this fairly simple. If you think about investments, they're the vehicles that are going to get you to your goals. And if you think about insurance, they're the vehicles that are going to protect you from risk. To make the conversation around investments simple, I like to think of investments in terms of what they're supposed to do. So we have investments and accounts that are just designed to help you fund that retirement goal. And they have different characteristics, for example, than investments and accounts that are designed to help you fund college and graduate school for your children and grandchildren. We even have different accounts and investments that are there to help you save money to pay for healthcare expenses. And finally, if you're charitably inclined and you have causes that you love, we have different accounts and investments that help you save for that. There's really an account and investment type to help you with any of the goals that might be important to your family. And all of these investments have tax ramifications and tax implications. So you're going to want to understand what type of account to use for what goal, what investments go with it, and what are the tax implications. Let's talk about insurance. Insurance is there to help you reduce risk if something happens unexpected. And there are a lot of different types of insurance in America, and I'm just going to talk about a few here. I'm going to talk about the ones that we see most often. And let's start at the top and talk about health insurance. So in America, until you reach retirement age and qualify for Medicare, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you'll be responsible for securing your own health insurance. And that could be either you buying it or an employer paying for it or paying for part of it. The next type of insurance we'll touch on is disability insurance. Disability insurance pays an income for you if for some reason you're sick or hurt and can't work. Then there's life insurance. Life insurance provides money to your loved ones in case you pass away, and that helps them with the transition and to pay expenses. Then there's long-term care insurance. This is an insurance we don't see all over the world. In America, we have long-term care insurance mostly to cover expenses as we age. If our families are unable to take care of us for some reason and we need someone to help with that, that kind of insurance will cover those expenses. Then there's property insurance. I know all of you will be buying property insurance because you're going to own something you want to protect. So for example, when you get that car that Dianne talked about, you're going to want to have automobile insurance that protects the value of that car if you get in an accident and will replace that car for you. When you buy your house, you're going to want to have homeowners insurance. So that if something happens to that house, maybe there's a fire in the kitchen, that insurance will help repair your home. And finally, there's what we call general liability insurance. And I like to call this when something bad happens insurance because it means that you might have hurt someone or damaged their property. An example of this would be if you're driving your car and you accidentally look the other way and run into the back of somebody else. Likely you might damage their car and the driver of the other car might get hurt. Liability insurance protects you. It helps pay for the expenses associated with that accident. So these are just a handful of the types of insurance policies. Having someone help you determine what you need and when you need it and the right type and amount is going to be important for you. All right, I'd like to introduce the concept of employee benefits and employer benefits. So in America, if you're going to work for a company, they likely will provide you with some benefits other than your salary. Of course, your salary is going to be very important, how much they're going to pay you. But you also want to be asking the question, what other benefits will you be providing me? And if you're an employer, if you're someone who's going to own your own business, you're going to want to understand these too, because your employees are going to be expecting you to offer some benefits. And you're going to want to offer them benefits because that's going to attract good talent to work for your company. And you're going to want to retain them and keep them happy. It's a lot easier to keep a really good employee than to find a new one. So the most common employer benefits in the US are health insurance, as we've discussed before, because it's a private health insurance. So you're going to want to see if your employer offers this. They may pay for some of it, they may pay for part of it. And then the second most popular employer benefit is retirement accounts. Because retirement is one of our biggest goals, funding that retirement, we want to be able to have some accounts to put money in. And these accounts typically have tax advantages to them. And often your employer will contribute too. So as you're looking for work and you're thinking about that, don't just think about how much you're going to earn, but think about the benefits that the employers will provide you. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the big goals. And I know all of these are going to be important to many of you. In America, we value higher education. We value college. We value graduate school. And I want you to know that there are plenty of options. There are options likely in your local cities. There are likely options for college that states sponsor. And there are likely private institutions whose names you may have already be familiar with and have heard. There are lots of options here. So whatever your children and grandchildren need, you can find it in America. And I think it's really interesting to me how we support university education in America. Because we value it, because it's part of our DNA, cities and states and the federal government support it. And they support it financially through loans, through grants, through ways to help pay for college. And as I mentioned earlier, there are also investments that will help you save for college. Likely the federal government and state governments won't provide all the money for you. You're going to need to do some saving yourself. No problem. We have accounts and investments that are targeted for that. And there may be even some of you who have children or grandchildren who have a talent. Maybe they're musically inclined. Maybe they're good at a sport. Maybe they're studying something academically and they have a good start on that. A lot of time colleges will want to attract your children to the college by providing some scholarship money. So I just want you to know there are a lot of options for higher education. We can help you figure that out. It's a very achievable goal, and I know it's very important to a lot of you. The biggest goal that we all have in America, though, financially, is funding that retirement dream. We talk a lot about the retirement dream in America. And you know, retirement, I like to think of retirement as the point when you've accumulated enough resources so that you don't have to work full time. The retirement landscape in America has changed a lot in the last 20 years. You know, when I used to talk to my dad and my grandfather, their idea was, I'm going to work as hard as I can, like I'm running a race, until I turn 65, and then I'm going to stop working. I'm just going to relax. And there's certainly some people who still do that in America, but the landscape has really opened up. We have clients who work later in life. Some of them need to financially, but some of them just want to. There's an impact they might want to have on their community, or they just love the social interaction of work. We also have clients who aren't working as late in life full time. Maybe they leave a full-time job early and start their own business, or they work as a consultant using some of that expertise they developed from their employer. Some people even work part-time. The dream is really what you can envision. If you can envision it and you start your planning early enough, you can create it. Let's talk about the building blocks of retirement in America. So the first building block is Social Security. Social Security, Dianne already talked about the importance of getting your Social Security card. Social Security is the federally funded system where the federal government will provide income for you in retirement. Now, in order to get this income, you have to qualify. So you have to work a certain number of years, you have to pay taxes into the system, and your benefit is based on how long you work and how much you earn. So qualifying for Social Security is very important, and understanding how you qualify is one of the first things you're going to want to do when you come to America, because this is an income the federal government will pay you for your entire life. So it's something that should be at the top of your list. The second building block of retirement is what we call pensions. You may be familiar with pensions. Pensions are a promise by your employer to pay you an income after you stop working for them, usually for your entire life. Cities offer pensions to their workers. States offer pensions. Federal government offers pensions. Private employers offer pensions. But here's what I want you to know. Not as many employers offer pensions anymore. If you look at this graph, you can see that pensions in the United States peaked in the 1980s, and they really have dropped significantly. So as you're looking for where you're going to work, you want to make sure you ask about pensions, but don't be surprised if they're not offered anymore. The third building block is Medicare. Medicare is that federally funded program that provides health insurance and retirement. Like Social Security, you have to qualify for it. So you're going to want to know right away when you get here, how do I qualify for Medicare? How do I begin developing credits? Because the cost of health insurance on your own would be prohibitive in retirement. You're going to want to have Medicare. That's something we can help you understand. That's something you're going to want to look at initially. And then finally, I need to let you know that for most people, the first three building blocks won't cover everything in order to have a satisfactory retirement. You're going to want to save and invest on your own, and you're going to want to know how to do that and how much to save and where to put your money, because what you want is to have these 4 building blocks as your foundation for that dream retirement you want to have. Finally, let's talk about generational planning. So I know this is at the top of your heart. It is for me too. We all have family members who we love, older than us, younger than us, and you're going to want to know how to plan for them too. And I like to divide generational planning into 2 areas. One is planning for folks while you're living. And this is going to be important, understanding how much you can afford to give, how you're going to give to them, are there any tax implications? That's something that we can help you with because I know there are going to be people that you're going to want to support during your lifetime. The other type of generational planning is what we call estate planning. And this is what happens to everything when you pass away. It's not the most fun topic to talk about, but I need to talk about it with you because you know more than half of Americans don't have a proper estate plan. I don't want you to be one of the half of Americans that don't have this. So your plan, you're in control of, and you'll create it, and an estate planning attorney will have some legal documents that will have everything that's important to you in those documents. And you're going to identify things like, if I pass away, who's going to care for my children? If I become sick and I can't make medical decisions for myself, who's going to do that for me? And you're going to want to make sure that everything you've accumulated and built up, all the things that you own, go to your loved ones when you want them to go there. And finally, any estate plan is going to make sure that the cost of making sure that your loved ones get everything that you own is reduced, that you're not paying a lot of unnecessary fees, and that if your estate is big enough that you minimize the estate taxes that might be part of it. So we love helping with generational planning because generational planning means you have people in your family you love and you want to take care of them. So this really concludes my prepared remarks for you. But let's review. And Ky, if you can go to the next slide for me. I wanted to make sure that you understood a little bit about your team. Who might be on your team? How do you choose them? I wanted to teach you a little about investments and insurance. I wanted to introduce you to the concept and the importance of employee benefits. And finally, I wanted to reassure you that those 3 big goals that most of you might have, you can attain them. It just requires some good planning. And I'd like to close with a quick story, if I might. So I mentioned to you at the beginning of my presentation that my wife immigrated to America many years ago, but I didn't tell you how we met. So many years ago, I was doing some volunteer work in our community of Charlotte, North Carolina, helping families with high school students figure out how to pay for college. And I worked with several other advisors. We worked for a nonprofit charity, and we held workshops in different libraries around the city at different times of the year. And I was leading a workshop one night at a local library, and there were about 40 mothers and fathers in the audience. And one of them was my future wife. I didn't know it at the time, but after the workshop, she came up to me and asked me some questions. You see, as someone who was new to America, she was trying to figure this out. How do I get my children into college? Where's the best school for them? How do I pay for it? And I was able to help her with that. And little did I know, we've been together ever since. So I understand some of the challenges that you may be thinking you have, and I know some of the things you may be trying to figure out because I've lived this experience with my wife. And I can tell you that there are a lot of people here who can help you. And there are a lot of people here who want to help you. I'm excited about your journey. I wish you the best. Thanks for your interest. If I can help you with any of this, please email me, call me, or contact me via my website. Thanks so much. Ky, back to you.
Ky, shall I take over at this point? I have a couple of extra questions that I'd like to pose to Todd that we've been seeing and coming in. Todd, if you could answer some of these questions. Here's a good one. What if I'm already at retirement age when I arrive in the US? What options are available to me then?
So Dianne, that's a great question. And you know, there's some challenges to that because one of the things I mentioned earlier is that to qualify for Social Security and Medicare, you know, there's some hoops you have to jump through in terms of working. So Social Security may or may not be an option for you. That's something that we would need to talk with you about individually, depending on your situation, your work record, and your country of origin. There are some options with Medicare to be able to buy into Medicare without qualifying for it, and that's something we can work with you on too. One of the building blocks I mentioned was your own savings and investments. Likely you will have some savings and investments in the United States if you come over and are retired. Understanding how to structure those and coordinate them with your other resources is something that you're going to want to pay attention to because likely that's going to be a very important means of supporting your family.
Here's another one. What kinds of financial vehicles are available to me with regard to planning for my retirement in the United States? Can you speak to what kind of financial vehicles your clients could look at?
Sure, I'll talk about a couple of general vehicles, and I want you to know that there are lots. So I'm not giving you financial advice here on what to do, but in the interest of time, I'll talk about two categories. The first set of categories are accounts that are offered by employers. And one of the main types of plans that we use in America is called a 401k. And a 401k will allow you to put money into that account and get some tax benefits for it. And most likely your employer will match a portion of what you put in. In other words, if you put in a certain amount of money, they may put in the same amount. So 401k is an important and most commonly used plan that employers use. There are also individual accounts. So if you're not working or if you want to just supplement the retirement with your own account, we have things called individual retirement accounts or Roth individual retirement accounts. And these are accounts that you can use personally to use that have different tax treatments, but they can help fund retirement.
That's wonderful. Here's an interesting one. Can I transfer my existing financial planning investments to a US investment to continue my retirement planning? Could you speak to that?
I can speak to it at a certain level. Some of this will obviously depend on your country of origin, but in general, investment firms in the US will accept your investments if they come in cash. So what most of our clients do is investments come into a bank, they're US dollar denominated, and then those investments are then moved into an investment account. This question has a lot of different innuendos where it could be different depending on your personal situation. So that's something we might need to talk more about on an individual basis.
I have a last question here. What kinds of life insurance policies are available in the United States?
Yeah, the easy answer is what you want, you can buy. The life insurance industry is a big industry. They're very consumer oriented. They're constantly innovating, and they are trying to keep up with the market demand. So you can find life insurance policies that will provide life insurance for a short period of time. You can find life insurance policies that will be available no matter how long you live. If you're a business owner, you can find life insurance policies that will protect your business in the event you pass away. So there are a wide variety of insurance policies. It's important that you understand what you're trying to accomplish with it so you can tie that to the appropriate policy.
Thank you so much, Todd. Back to you, Ky.
Thank you both. Those are good and very insightful questions, and thank you both for your time. And Todd, we'll come back to you. I know I was watching the screen, there have been a lot of questions that have come in, and Andrew has been gathering those. So there will be some additional questions for you and for all of our panelists coming up here shortly. So I encourage everyone to just hang on, and we'll get to some additional insightful questions here in a moment. And I'd like to introduce, before we get to those questions, our company, CMB Regional Centers, who we are in our current EB5 project. And I think it's important for those, just as Todd was indicating, you need to know who's your team. And so I'd like to introduce the CMB team. And our CMB team includes some 50 individuals, or nearly 50 individuals from various countries. We speak 14 different languages in our offices, so we can speak and communicate some complex financial investment requirements of the EB5 program, some of the project nuances in the native languages of people around the world. And we've got more than 100 countries represented in the investments, in the investors from CMB who've chosen CMB as their investment vehicle for their EB5 investment. We also take very seriously the fact that we need to be available when you need us. And that includes 7 days, 24 hours contact with CMB. We have a sister company based in Switzerland, CMB Swissco, and that they provide opportunity that if you would like to contact CMB around the clock, you'll get a response in a very short order. We like to have a 10-minute response time. Oftentimes it's much less than that. Oftentimes it may be myself or one of our team members here in the United States. I don't sleep very much, and it drives my wife crazy because I can be up anytime in the middle of the night answering questions, emails, WhatsApp responses, and because it's important that we respond to our clients when they need us. Another important part is we are in contact with attorneys throughout the process. For our EB5 investors, Todd talked about having attorneys and the various skill sets that those attorneys bring to a client. And immigration attorneys is one of those aspects of legal work in the United States. Everyone needs an immigration attorney. So our responsibility is to make sure that we are in communication with the attorney of your choosing. We require every investor to have their own attorney appointed and representing them. And we work very closely with those attorneys to ensure that they have all the information that they need to file your petitions, the I-526, the I-829 petitions in a timely way and on your behalf. And then we're also in contact with you. We're talking about partnership distributions, talking about project updates. We communicate with you on a quarterly basis with information about your investment and your project so that communication channel is wide open, and we make sure that we're in contact with you throughout. We mentioned a little bit about COVID and what that has done to the business world, and EB5 is no exception. So I wanted to touch on that a little bit and to give you the reason and what sets CMB apart. CMB was authorized as a regional center in 1997. So we've been through a lot of cycles in the US economy and the global economy. The Great Recession was one of those. The recession that happened, those cyclical recessions that have occurred over time. We were aware that storm clouds were on the horizon when this COVID-19 thing started to erupt in China and then started to spread out over the Chinese New Year as people began to travel, as it spread out over the globe. So we were in touch with our borrowers from our partnerships almost immediately before or just slightly around the time that the World Health Organization declared COVID a pandemic. We were in contact with the borrowers who were using the funds from our EB5 partnerships. We took an advanced approach, making sure that we were in contact. We wanted to know what they expected from the COVID situation and their anticipated impact on business. And we provided a report to the limited partners who have invested in those various projects about what the impact was or what the impact was anticipated to be from each one of those borrowers. We did that in advance. We responded to what was on the horizon, we didn't have to react in a fearful way. And we took a very organized approach. We continue to evaluate what's ongoing as far as COVID impact to those borrowers. And we communicate that and continue to communicate that with every limited partner and every project from CMB. And the way we do that is through our share file accounts. If you have accessed your share file account, you have seen your information regarding your project, or if you haven't yet invested, if you're looking to invest. I think one of the things that sets us apart is the fact that we have that open channel of communication. It's an ongoing communication. And our experience, CMB's experience, brings insight, brings value like no other regional center can, simply because of our experience, because of our team, and because of the way that we see things, in the way that when there are storm clouds on the horizon, we've already been through and we've already experienced that, so we can get out in front of it and don't have to respond in a fearful way or in a way that is a reaction rather than a response. So let's look at our current project, and I'm going to go through these slides very quickly. I encourage you to reach out to us and talk more in depth about our project that we have. It's a project in Southern California on the footprint of the former Norton Air Force Base and the March Air Force Base. It is an industrial logistics project. The first project, known as Waterman, includes the build out and the preparation for a tenant who will be moving into this already constructed building. The tenant has been identified as a Fortune 500 top 5 e-commerce retailer. The lease has been signed. It's a 10-year lease. It's fully executed. It's available for you to, and information on this project is available for you to examine. But the investment partnership will provide funding to transform this empty warehouse. It's a building of about 1 million square feet to a ready to go, ready to occupy space for the tenant, that e-commerce retailer. Importantly to know is the location and the project in looking at what e-commerce the industry is doing today. This particular project, CMB Group 78, takes advantage of the fact that the location is in the Inland Empire. It's an area of Southern California lying between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. The Inland Empire is perfect location for these types of developments, simply because the space that's required for the size of a building for these logistics and warehouse and distribution centers for e-commerce occupy a lot of space. The real estate is very affordable in this area that's on the edge of the desert. So consequently, they can afford to build these size buildings here in this particular location with good regional transportation hub and good airports, facilities, and rail hubs, and very close access to the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. But they don't have to spend the money to purchase land or to occupy land that would be closer to the city of Los Angeles. So it's very cost efficient and very locationally efficient to develop these particular projects in the area known as the Inland Empire. And in fact, the Inland Empire is a term, and this particular location, when it comes to logistics and warehouse facilities, is the second largest distribution and logistics hub in the United States. Chicago is number 1. The Inland Empire, maybe you've never heard of it, is number 2. And there's a huge demand that is going unmet. So this is building into and making available space that is required with a high demand. Also, e-commerce, certainly everyone is shopping online these days, and that e-commerce growth is expected to double by 2025. In the United States, it's somewhere between $600 and $700 billion a year. They're looking for 1.3 trillion. A doubling of this e-commerce business in the next 5 years, an explosion, an incredible growth. So this particular project takes the advantage of location and the growth in the industry, and investors in the Group 78 project will also benefit from those two components in this particular project. The developer, Hillwood Development Company, it's part of the Ross Perot family of companies. It's an organization that CMB has worked with for 31 different partnerships over our experience. The Hillwood Company is very, very conservative. They understand the immigration process. They understand what it means to be conservative, to deliver on time, to pay, to return capital to the partnerships that they use it, that they borrowed it from. It's been a very, very good partnership. The projects create a lot of jobs. They utilize the money for that 6-year period of time that the loans are, and they return the capital on time and in full. Job creation. Remember, EB5 is a jobs creation program. Investors for this project, once it's fully subscribed, will total 81 total investors. That would mean that 810 jobs, or 10 jobs each, would need to be created by this project for everyone to qualify for their I-829 or their permanent green card application approval. Looking at the evaluation by our economists, it shows more than 1,300 jobs are expected to be created by this project, a huge buffer of 63% more jobs per investor to be created than are minimally needed to meet that I-829 or permanent green card approval requirement. So again, the Hillwood partnership, the CMB partnership, is one that has lasted over many, many years, many partnerships, and has been successful over for many families who have looked to come to the United States using the EB5 program and trusting CMB for their EB5 investment. So we look forward to serving you and your family. If you're looking for an EB5 investment, or you're looking for guidance in EB5, learning about the program, learning about what's important in EB5, please contact us. Drop us an email. You can scan the QR code, give us a phone call. You can reach out to me personally, Ky, K-Y, at cmbeb5visa.com. Drop me an email. I'll be glad to respond and to get answers that you may have regarding the EB5 program or CMB's current or past projects, and certainly our history of success. Be glad to serve you and your family, and be honored to do so. Thank you. So that takes us to the all-important Q&A. Andrew, if you're ready to guide us.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ky. And I tell you, the Group 78 project that we have on the market right now is so unique, and it's an exciting thing for us to be able to bring to the market for potential investors. And Dianne and Todd, thank you for your presentations. Very, very valuable information, and clearly it's sparked some additional questions from our attendees today. And there's one that sticks out that I think, Todd, you should address just right away. In the United States, what's the difference between a financial advisor and a wealth manager?
Thank you for that question. And I would say that it may be a little bit uncertain because we use terms interchangeably in the United States, and it can be very confusing. So I did talk a little bit about what a wealth manager does earlier. And a wealth manager, just to kind of reiterate, is going to understand your entire financial picture and help you with achieving the goals that are important to you, reducing taxes, maximizing your investments, retirement, higher education, intergenerational planning. They're going to coordinate the work of your other advisors. So they're more like, if you think about it in a construction analogy, like an architect and a general contractor. A financial advisor in the US, a lot of people can call themselves financial advisor. So they may be working in insurance, they may be working in investments, they may be working in tax. So be careful when you see the word financial advisor. Make sure you understand what their area of expertise is. Most likely it's a very narrow focus as opposed to a more broad focus. In a construction analogy, we would call a financial advisor maybe a subcontractor.
Fantastic. So here's one for Dianne. Dianne, we had one of our attendees ask, do you charge for your services? And would those be part of choosing a state, buying a house, cars, opening a bank account, things like that? So maybe you could touch a little bit upon that.
Yes, unfortunately, we do have to charge for our services so that I can pay my bills and run my business efficiently. But yes, we do have what I believe to be very reasonable fees that we charge our clients. We have various packages where we charge for specific services that we require. For example, we would charge you a fee to facilitate the opening of your bank account, make sure that you get the right documents together in your home country in order to qualify for this bank account in the United States. We do something called an LSD trip, which is not what you think it is. It's called a look, see, and decide trip. Unfortunately, those are not possible right now, but we do have online presentations that we can give you on various cities and various lifestyles that you may want to pursue in the United States. So we have lots of Zoom opportunities that we can work with you on immediately until you are able to make a trip to the United States to decide finally where you want to be. So I'd be happy to send you our secure access to a piece of our website where we list all of our services and fees. I'd be happy to send that to you if you shoot us an email.
Thank you, Dianne. And yeah, we'll have your contact information up here once we've concluded Q&A. So anybody that has an interest, please do reach out. I know that we have had quite a few of our investors utilize their services and they rave about it. So thank you again. Ky, if you could address this, please. So if we file an EB-5 investor visa this month, when can we expect approval for those applying out of India?
Well, I would always refer anyone that's asking that question to go to the website for the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, the USCIS. And they give a range, and the range includes some numbers that you have to understand what that range means. And the first number, I think, is about 27.5 months. Working from memory, it may be a little bit different than that. And that is the median. That means that as many I-526 petitions are processed before that time period as processed after. The outer edge of that is pushing about 4 years, 47.5 months, I think. And that outer edge says that 90% of I-526 petitions that have been filed are adjudicated within that second number. So the range that they show is 27.5, and again, working from memory to about 48 months. And that having been said, we're seeing reports from the USCIS that shows that their processing times are much less than that. We've seen other industry reports saying that processing times have fallen certainly a lot less than that front number, the median number, the majority of which fall within 2 years or less. I would say if someone were to ask me that, certainly the numbers you can rely on are the USCIS, but they're a good rule of thumb, regardless of where you're from, regardless of homeland or other, unless there is a visa backlog. And again, we touched on that very briefly. That visa backlog would cause petitioners to queue up, waiting for an available visa based upon the new processing style and from the USCIS. That number that I typically use is estimated 2 years. If it happens before then, that's really time for excitement. If it happens after that, then it's probably going to fall in that wider range that the USCIS provides. I wish there were a definite answer to the question, but there's really not. Processing times seem to have little staccato or any rhythm to them, in the fact that some are showing that they process very, very quickly. Others, they take longer for no apparent reason. They're stuck in the system for perhaps some deeper research by the USCIS, pulled out of the system for a deeper dive. Not really sure, but anticipate that my term would be 2 years. If it happens sooner than that, then be excited, and after, then you always refer to the USCIS webpage for guidance.
Maybe you could touch just a bit on the treatment for those applying out of India based on the recent visa bulletin.
I don't know that the treatment in the USCIS, and we've seen this when they've talked, when they've discussed with national conferences, whether it be IIUSA or AILA, that they put blinders on. The instant petition is they look at each individual petitioner as an individual, unique application I don't know that they are today looking for land of origin unless there is a visa that's available. Now, the visa bulletin shows that India is current. Let's discuss that a little bit. Remember, there's an allocation of 700 visas every year. That's that visa allocation, and that's 7% of the total. We can dig into that, but that part of the rules are that every unique country gets their own 700, or no more than 7% of the total number of visas that are available in the category. That is 700. If their country has not used their allocation, then the queue, it becomes shorter. The USCIS will process based upon the chargeability, another term, where the family is from that is filing that I-526 petition. Long story short is the folks from India, the processing times of the USCIS have lagged far enough behind that it may be difficult to issue all 700 visas in the fiscal year. Therefore, if there is a application that's been filed, USCIS has processed that particular application, then there would be a visa that's available for them, or they could do a change of status here in the United States. Simply, I wouldn't promise that any applicant, regardless of country, would get processed before or outside the lines of what's being provided as far as guidance on the USCIS website. There are some organizations in the marketplace that are promising all sorts of things. They are telling stories of 2 months, 3 months, 8 months. I don't know what the story happens to be. I've heard 9 months, and they're using it as the rule of thumb. That's disingenuous at best, misleading at the outside, and certainly not reliable as the foundation of as a foundational statement to invest and to guide one's life upon. Look to the USCIS website as your guidance. My rule of thumb is 2 years. If it happens before, then be excited. And if it happens after, that's still within the guidelines.
Thank you, Ky. That's great insight. Todd, could you touch base on inheritance tax? And in a case, inheritance tax is stocks and bonds. How will this be treated?
It's a very good question, and I will tell you that this part of estate planning has a lot of complexity to it because politicians like to change the tax code frequently in America. In general, at your passing, everything that you own is added up. And that would be stocks, that would be bonds, that would be your business interests, your home, your cars, everything you own gets totaled up. And your accountant files an estate tax return. If the amount that you own is over a certain threshold, then there would be an estate tax due at the federal tax level. Now, there are also some states that have their own estate tax or inheritance tax. Some states have none, but others have that, and their levels could be different than the federal level. So as part of your estate plan, things that you'll want to do is you'll want your wealth manager to be able to calculate the value of your estate today. You want them to project the value into the future and then help you understand if you're subject to federal tax or state tax or both, and what you might be able to do to reduce those taxes. Again, this is a big political hot item in our country. So this is these numbers and these rules have probably changed 7 or 8 times over the last 20 years. So it's something a good advisor, a good wealth manager can help you stay on top of.
Thank you very much. And this is also why it's super important for people to have a good team and a good network while they're considering moving to the United States. This is part of what, Diane's initial questions are going to be when she's going through an evaluation. Then, of course, we're working with you today, Todd, to help enlighten people upon some of these nuances that come up. All of this stuff is super important and super valuable. So thank you for your insight on that. Ky, there's a question here, and you're the perfect person. So am I correct in understanding that when selecting a regional center for my EB5, the number of I-829 approvals is more important than the number of 526 petitions filed?
Yeah, well, the goal of every EB5 investor is to get a permanent green card. And so when you're looking at an EB5 regional center, have they been able to demonstrate that they've been able to achieve for any investor, any number of investors, the ultimate goal, the I-829? There are many, many I-526 petitions that have been filed that have gone without the ability for the investor to achieve their permanent green card status. The I-526 petition approval is the initial step. It's not the goal. That's why when looking at CMB's record, you can see that not only have we achieved the I-829 petition approval for one partnership, for many partnerships over time, we've been able to achieve that time and again. For every investor that files an I-829 with CMB, they file it knowing that there are sufficient jobs that have been created for them to see the approval of their application based upon job creation. That is a critical piece of the due diligence. It's not the only piece of due diligence, but it's important to know that the regional center has been able to achieve that ultimate goal. Improving the jobs and the job creation is not easy. It's something that CMB takes very, very seriously, and it's something that we approach in a manner that gathers information along the process of the job creation and the spending for the project. So when it comes time to file the I-829, it isn't, again, all of a sudden having to manage a situation where we haven't done any planning, and all of a sudden it's an emergency. We've been gathering the information all along the way, and then when it's time for the investors to file, we communicate with the investor, we communicate with the attorney, and we've already gathered and put together that information for their filing of the I-829 so that they can do it in a timely way. So it's an important aspect to consider. It's not the only one, but it's certainly an important one. And thank you for the question, Andrew.
Thank you too. Let's see here. We've got a couple of them. So, Ky, what is the biggest challenges for an EB5 application coming from the UK, please?
The biggest application challenge from any country is source of funds, proving that, and again, I'm not an immigration attorney, but these are my observations. Assuming that you've made the decision to choose the regional center, let's assume that it's a CMB project, good choice. And now it's time to work with your attorney in filing your petition. The point that is critical is to provide your attorney the information that of your background and your source of funds. The funds that are used for an EB5 investment must come from a lawful source, and they must follow a lawful path to arrive in the United States. So we've talked about three components: choosing a good regional center and a good regional center project. Thank you for choosing CMB. Second, getting a good attorney who will provide the narrative for your source of funds. If that's challenged, then you need to have a good attorney that provides the appropriate narrative that gathers the information to file your application with the USCIS in a way that explains where the money has come from. And then thirdly, before that all happens, make sure that you've done your homework and your due diligence on the regional center. Being in the UK, if you haven't traveled to the United States and you're doing it from afar, you need to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. Ask a lot of questions from the regional center. On CMB side, we'll provide you as much information as we possibly can. We'll send you the documented proof. If anything that I tell you or any one of our staff tells you as part of that due diligence, make sure that we prove it to you that what we're telling you is the truth. Because you're going to make a life-changing decision in investing in an EB5. It requires that you leave the UK, come to the United States. There's an immigration requirement to that. So the decision that you make needs to be made for you and your family based upon good foundational information. Many regional centers, they may even tell you that, geez, I'm not even going to talk to you by mail. You ask too many questions. And we've seen that, but it's never too many questions. For CMB, there's no question that's out of bounds, and there's no question that's off limits. It's a big deal to invest in EB-5, and it's a big deal, more importantly, that we take into account that this life-changing decision has implications not only for today's family, but as Todd talked about, generations. We're talking about your children and your grandchildren and their children. And so it has a huge impact, and we honor that in every way, in the way we conduct ourselves and the way that we provide you information during your due diligence process.
Thank you, Ky. Todd, I've got another one for you. So if I've been saving or have an investment for university education for my children, what can I do to continue that?
So in America, there is a wonderful savings vehicle that might be appropriate for you. It's something maybe you want to evaluate before you arrive and then when you arrive. So Congress, as I mentioned to you, the politicians, Congress, they want to incentivize higher education. We value it. And they've created this program called a 529 program, not to be confused with some of the numbers that Ky is using in his presentation. We have a 529 program that allow you to put money into an account and grow it on behalf of your children or your grandchildren, or yourself, by the way. If you want to save for your own education in the future, maybe there's something that you want to do on your own. The big benefit of this account is it allows the growth, the earnings in the investment to grow tax-free, as long as you use withdrawals to pay for expenses at college. So that's important, because if you're paying taxes on your investments along the way, you won't have as much to available at the end to fund college for your children or grandchildren. This way you can make contributions into the account either at one time, on a monthly basis as you're saving, and they grow tax-free, and now you can use them to fund college. There are other options available. That one is very popular, and it's particularly popular if you start early, because you get years and years and years of tax-free growth. It's a great question. I'd love to help you with that. If you have any more questions on that, please let me know.
Thank you, Todd. So, Ky, here's a couple of transparency questions. So what is your success rate and the returns on an EB-5 investment?
And the transparency question is an important one. And again, as to let you know that CMB in the year 2014 set a new level, a new standard of transparency throughout the EB-5 industry. Here's how we did it. We undertook an audit, an independent third party whose scope of work was to evaluate all the financials of every partnership that CMB has, as well as every claim of success that CMB states. That includes every I-526 petition approval, every I-829 petition approval, and every I-924 filing that has been approved by the USCIS. So we went deeper. We had that organization. Again, they're not a company that works within CMB's walls. It's an independent third party who did an evaluation of CMB and did an audit. And so those audits for each individual partnership are uploaded to a secure folder, share file folder for each one of the limited partners to evaluate, to ask questions, to have their advisors evaluate, to look at, and to understand the financials and the claim success for each one of their partnerships. So if you were to go to our website, www.cmbeb5visa.com, you'll see on there as you scroll down the page how many investors that we've had, how many I-829 petitions approved, how many I-526 petitions approved, and those numbers have been evaluated by an independent third party. So again, it's make me prove to you, make any regional center prove to you that what they're telling you is the truth. And again, we have set the standard for transparency in the EB-5 industry. We were the very first regional center to undertake that audit of not only financials, but of performance. And we were, again, then we had to be the very first ones to upload that information to the individual limited partners, and each one of those partnerships to evaluate on their own or to get an advisor to evaluate so that they could ask questions and provide CMB with any insight that they needed, questions on insights that they needed as far as what was being reported.
Thank you, Ky. And maybe I missed it, but they were asking, what's our success rate?
Well, thank you. And our success rate for every EB-5 project that has been evaluated by the USCIS, it has been approved without fail 100% of the time. When it comes to an I-829 petition, that's at the I-526, the project I-526 stage. When it comes to the I-829 stage, every investor who files their I-829 knows that they filed with sufficient jobs for those I-829s to qualify for approval, and that's without exception. So when investors look at a regional center, we've had more than 5,700 investors invest with CMB. So when we're on group 78. So we've had a lot of projects, and to say that every one of our projects that have been adjudicated by the USCIS has been approved, there's a lot of projects that they've approved. Thousands of investors' I-526 petitions have been approved. Thousands of I-829 petitions have been filed with sufficient jobs showing that enough jobs have been created for those investors to see an I-829 petition approval based upon job creation. It's that simple. We don't leave things random. We don't do chance. It's too important to consider the job creation component and the requirements for the success of the investors on the front end. To ensure that the jobs have been created is a part of how we structure our projects. There's no guarantees, but so far it's been no miss. We have not yet failed to accomplish what we have started out to do for every investor that trusts CMB with their EB-5 goals.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ky. Dianne, I'd like to know, if I immigrate under EB-5, would I be able to maintain a credit profile such as to get a credit card, lease a car, a house mortgage? I can securitize credit through cash, stock, or bonds, but if required, or do I have to buy these things on cash in the absence of a credit profile?
This is an incredibly important question. Immigrants that come to the United States only discover this when they arrive. America does not take into account your previous credit history, your previous financial situation. They are incredibly particular about you paying your bills in contiguous USA. So this is a problem that we have successfully addressed for our clients for many, many years, because it's very hard if you get here and you suddenly are faced with the fact that you have to start spending cash on everything that you need. And in America, we do not buy anything for cash because our interest rates are unbelievably low and competitive, and they are the lowest that they've ever been in history. So it makes absolutely no financial sense to spend cash on anything. You use banks' money to buy stuff. And so that is why at Pathway, we are here to coach you and teach you how to establish that credit score way before you put your foot here, so that the door flies open. And I often tell my clients that CMB gives you the golden key to open the door to the United States. I roll out the red carpet for you. So it's very important that you understand how much money we can save you by doing it smart and preparing your credit history before you get here, so that when you get here, you can plug it in to your social number and it all magically falls into place. So that is a conversation that I would love to have with whoever asked this question. It's a very detailed, very involved discussion, and it's obviously one of our services that we offer. I'd be delighted to help you with it. So a very important question and very important piece to making your life even more successful in the United States. And enables you to hold onto your cash, onto your capital that you've worked so hard to accumulate, and then you can pass it on to somebody like Todd Curry, who can manage it properly for you and really make it grow, and rather than spend it on cars and houses that you don't need to spend it on. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dianne. Todd, what kind of financial insurance products are available if I am unable to take care of my family or work, but I'm still alive? And how can I protect myself and my family from a catastrophic health incident?
If I understand your question, I think you're asking if something happens to you health-wise, how do you protect your family?
Yes.
If that's your question, there are really two pillars that are going to be important for you. The first is adequate health insurance. I mentioned earlier that health insurance is currently a private pay situation in the US. It's not federally provided to you by the government until you get into retirement age. So the most important decision you can make is to have the proper amount of health insurance, the right type of health insurance, so that you have the care you need. Again, like estate tax, health insurance right now is a big political issue in this country. So the landscape around health insurance policies is changing every year. So you're going to want to make sure that that's the first thing that you take care of, because if you have an accident or an illness that costs a lot, it has a very expensive procedure associated with it or expensive treatment, if you don't have the proper insurance, you're going to have to pay for it out of your own investments. We don't want you to have to do that, because that means there's less for your loved ones. So that's the first pillar I would suggest to you. The second is to make sure that you have an appropriate amount and type of disability insurance. As I mentioned, disability insurance pays an income to you if you can't work or sick. So let's say, for example, you get into an accident and you're unable to work for 3 or 4 years for some reason. Maybe you've hurt your back, maybe you've hurt your leg and you have to have multiple surgeries. What we don't want is for your family to have financial difficulty because you can't work. So if you have the appropriate type of disability insurance, that can provide an income to help your family during that period of time. And these types of insurances can be purchased individually, or in some cases, they can be provided by your employer. I hope that helps. If you have a specific question around that, please feel free to contact me if I can give you a little bit more information.
Great information. Thanks, Todd. Well, it looks like we'll have time for just 1 or 2 more questions. Ky, do you see any challenges that investors should be aware of to the whole EB-5 process and how it runs with any changes post-election?
You know, my crystal ball is a little bit foggy on that particular. This election season is one that is in the middle of COVID. There's a lot of things that have my crystal ball a little bit murky at this point. But here's what I understand. The EB-5 program is permanent. The EB-5 was created in the 1990s, and the portion of the EB-5 program is permanent. There is no one in Congress today that wishes to eliminate a program that creates jobs for American workers, that works appropriately. That is a good program. And so there's no appetite for that, regardless of which side of the aisle that you're on, or whether you're elected as an incumbent or you're fresh into Congress. The portion of EB-5 that needs to be evaluated and renewed each year is the regional center portion of things. EB-5 is permanent. The regional center needs to be reconsidered and reestablished. And right now we are in a year that the program needs to be renewed to give it some extended life. I anticipate, based upon the fact that the EB-5 program works, it allows for investment, foreign investment into the United States. It's targeted to areas that are needy, that have high unemployment, or in the countryside that wouldn't normally get investment from outside the United States channeled there to create jobs, that the program will be extended and renewed. I also don't have any consideration beyond the fact that EB-5 is a good program. When you look at CMB's history and the amount of good that we've been able to do, and I think the number is we're pushing towards the creation over our lifetime. We're pushing near 200,000 jobs have been created just by CMB alone, and in partnership with our partners, with our investors, and with those communities that have helped to create those jobs for American workers through the EB-5 program, and that's just CMB. Now we're going to continue to be in business. We're going to continue to create jobs for American workers, and I'm hoping that that runway after the election and many years into the future is a long one, because it will be very, very fruitful for those here in the United States who will work in jobs that have been created as a result of the investment from the EB-5 program.
Thank you very much, Ky. I've got a follow-up question here. Ky or Dianne or Todd, whoever feels it. So I would like to know the following. The immigration, if my children go to college or university for an undergraduate program, will the public or private universities charge the local fee?
I'll jump in here. If you live in the state of North Carolina, for example, where Todd and I are located, and you are a permanent resident of the state, your children will be entitled to attend all universities at the in-state tuition rate because you are resident in North Carolina. If your child wanted to go to university in a different state, like South Carolina or Connecticut or Massachusetts or anywhere else, they would have to pay what's called out-of-state tuition, which is somewhat higher. And then, of course, if you come here as a foreign national student and you're not a permanent resident, then you pay even much higher fee because you're not resident in the United States. So I hope that answers your question. You certainly do get benefits, which is one of the greatest benefits of being a green card holder, is in education. And as you know, your K through 12 children, aged 5 to 17 or 18, they can attend school for free in the United States for green card holders. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Well, we're approaching the end of our event. Ky, do you want to begin to offer any final or few last words here?
I do. I certainly want to thank our panelists and our guests today, and those of you that have joined us virtually as part of this event. It's a continuing event. The Coming to America series, I think, is providing foundation for those of you who have been with us over the past few webinars to understand that there's some things to think about before you come to the United States, some things to think about when you get here, and some things that you probably haven't thought about that we're hoping that will inspire you to consider and to reach out to our experts to get some guidance and to ask some questions. They've made themselves available to you, and it is a good resource for you. The one question from our guest in the UK, how do I do my research? What's the things to think about, and what do I have to consider? What's the challenges? That's what we're trying to address. Those challenges are the unforeseens and the unknowns, and I think Dianne and Todd have touched on those perfectly today. And so thank you to them, certainly, for their talent, and thank you for all of you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much to everybody who's attended. And I want to leave you with a small nugget that I tell my clients all the time. No matter how educated you are, no matter how much experience you've had in the world financially and all the other stuff that you've been busy with, unfortunately, when it comes to the United States, or with any country for that matter, but particularly the United States, you just don't know what you don't know. And so without professionals around you to guide you and to help you and to advise you, you can make the most awful mistakes and have great difficulty undoing them. So thank you to Ky and to Todd for your enormous insight and your enormous advice that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much.
Sincere thank you to all of our panelists today, and a sincere thank you to everyone who's attended and stayed with us through the entirety of our event. We're so happy you could be here today.
Todd, any last words for our guests?
You know, I was just going to thank CMB for putting on this Discover America series. I think this is just a fantastic way for everybody out there to become more informed and make better decisions. I'm fascinated by listening to Ky and Dianne because I learned so much. And I'm also fascinated by the viewers' stories. You know, I listened to my wife and her family over and over talk about the life before they came to America and their life after they came to America and everything in between. And I can't get enough of it. You know, you're about to embark on a pretty unique journey and a pretty special journey. And just know that there are a lot of people here who can help you. And good planning and early planning will help get you what's important to your family. Thanks so much for having me as a part of the panel today.
Thank you for being here, Todd. Well said. We hope you found this to be a valuable resource while planning to move to the United States. Feel free to use the contact information on your screen at this time. We will have a video link available if you'd like to watch again or even share with family and friends. You should expect to receive a follow-up email in the coming next days to provide links and contact information again as well. Again, thank you to everyone, and we look forward to seeing you stateside. Take care.
Thank you.